you.
We've got you covered.
We're on your side.
On your side. This is News 12 First at 5.
This video shows a group of people pretty close together in a Augusta nightclub. We speak to the sheriff's office and the governor's office about how this plays into Governor Kemp's order against big groups. Plus, here's a live look at Tropical Storm Isaias as it makes its way up the South Carolina coast. Chief Meteorologist Riley Hale is tracking the storm for us. Classrooms getting wiped down, school buses getting disinfected. The first day looked a lot different for Columbia County students. Instead of hugging friends and teachers, it was saying hey from a distance, and face masks are now part of school outfits. Brady Trapnell spoke with parents and the superintendent about day 1, day 2, and beyond.
Probably the strangest back to school you can think of, but it happened. And it came with masks, social distancing, and a bit of nerves. These are back to school pictures that you won't ever forget. But I spoke to several parents who say things went well this morning. Some kids rode the bus, others walked into school without their parents, but Columbia County Schools says the process was smooth. Dr. Carey says she's only heard positive feedback. Kids are social distancing in classrooms and wearing their face coverings like they're being asked. Yet these parents say it's going to take getting used to.
It was a little bit different today. You still had the jitters, but they were different jitters because you had to make a decision that was best for your household.
It was a little bit more than this mommy heart can handle, but we're handling it.
Columbia County Schools says parents seemed well prepared today, and that does make them confident and hopeful for the next few first days. We'll show you a closer look of what it was like inside schools on News 12 at 6 o'clock. Reporting in Columbia County, Brady Trapnell on your side.
Also the first day back for Warren County, and you're taking a look at some of those students and staff members right now, masked and practicing social distancing in the classroom and at lunch today. Warren County started their rotation for 2-day in-person learning, and Emmanuel County students also went back to school today as well. Just into the newsroom, 3 confirmed cases of coronavirus at Burt County Middle School. Students don't go back to the classroom until the Tuesday after Labor Day. We're told there have been a total of 8 confirmed cases since March. Burt County Schools has offered hybrid or remote learning for families. Augusta University welcomes students back to campus today. Our cameras were rolling this morning as the first students walked in. They'll continue moving in until Saturday as part of their phased reopening plan. Everyone on campus is required to wear a face covering while on campus. According to AU's website, person-to-person contact is strongly discouraged. The first day of classes is a week from today. 2 people are dead in Warren County, and now police are trying to figure out what happened. We don't have a lot of specifics, but here's what we do know. The GBI confirms they found 2 people dead around 10 this morning in Mitchell, Georgia, which is in Warren County. They haven't said how they died or who they are, much less any arrests. When we have more answers, we'll share them. Tropical storm Isaias making its way up the Carolina coast. There are still millions of people in store for a lot of rain and wind. All around Charleston, government offices and activities were closed in anticipation of Isaias. President Trump already approved an emergency declaration for North Carolina. That makes federal disaster relief funds quickly available if needed. Over in Tybee Island, double red flags are waving behind lifeguard stands, warning people to not go into the water. Officials said rip currents are extremely strong right now. This is video from today, and you can see that did not stop people from walking the beaches. Several people were seen swimming out too far yesterday, something officials said is too dangerous even for lifeguards. Here's another live look at Tropical Storm Isaias as it impacts the Carolina coast. This is in Myrtle Beach. Riley, we're not seeing any of that impact here.
Luckily not, Zaina. The worst of Isaias is going to stay off towards our east, but Myrtle Beach, like we were just looking at, they are likely going to see the worst impacts from this storm. Here's a current update just came in at 5 p.m. We're starting to see the pace of Isaias pick up just a little bit, and now it's finally made that northeast turn. We are still expecting landfall later this evening, anytime between sunset and midnight, for areas stretching from Myrtle Beach to around Wilmington, as we're expecting that eye wall to make contact with the coast. And we are expecting this storm to likely strengthen just a little bit to a low-end Category 1 hurricane there's obviously not going to be much difference between an upper end tropical storm, lower end Category 1 hurricane. But nonetheless, it is going to continue that fairly quick pace up towards the mid-Atlantic and Northeast Tuesday into Wednesday, and then just going to be out of here for us. We do have hurricane warnings in effect stretching from Georgetown, South Carolina, near the South Santee River, up to around Surf City, North Carolina. So those hurricane warnings are where we're expecting that landfall later tonight. Here's a current look at how it looks on radar. We are tracking some showers and storms across the CSRA, but mainly from a stalled front off towards our west. We'll have more of these storms heading our way in just a little bit.
A lot of music, what looks like a lot of people with very little space between them. That was the scene at Country Club on Washington Road this weekend. Just this past Friday, Governor Kemp extended his executive order that limits large gatherings. Wrdw spoke to the club and the sheriff's office about this.
A video surfaced this weekend of the Country Club here in Augusta. Now, there was very little social distancing and the dance floor was packed. Now, where does that leave Governor Brian Kemp's executive order guidelines? This was a scene Saturday night at the Country Club, just one day after Governor Kemp extended his public health state of emergency. But that executive order has restrictions on bars, especially pointing out large gatherings. The Georgia Department of Health says occupancy shall not exceed 50 people or 35% of total occupancy. And establishments like bars should prevent activities that enable close contact. As you can see in the video, there's still a problem with those guidelines. The Country Club told me they were at their 35% capacity and say they were doing what they were told according to the executive order. We reached out to the governor's office asking what local agencies can do to enforce these restrictions. They said all local law enforcement can enforce the restrictions on bars, but it's not required. The Richmond County Sheriff's Office told us saying they are investigating the incident. Now, we will break down how law enforcement can enforce those guidelines and restrictions coming up on News 12 at 6 o'clock. Reporting in Augusta, Wrdw on your side.
Thanks, Will. On the South Carolina side, it's back to business for public venues today. In Governor McMaster's latest executive order, movie theaters, concert venues, and parks can reopen with restrictions. His latest order also says restaurants are now required to follow the guidelines issued by Accelerate SC. Employees and customers will be required to wear masks, and tables will have to be 6 feet apart. Dine-in services at restaurants will be limited to 50% occupancy, and masks are also now required in government buildings. This is the last week for early voting for the Georgia primary runoff. Another look at Tropical Storm Isaias. This is Kiowa Island in South Carolina. We're tracking expected impacts here, and Riley, you say there will be very little.
Exactly right, Sierra. Luckily, Isaias is going to stay away from the CSRA and not bring us much in the way of impacts, but we are still expecting some showers and storms this evening. It's actually thanks to this stalled boundary off towards our west. That's actually set off a number of severe storms through metro Atlanta and some communities east of that. Now this line is now moving towards our western counties, so from Sparta through Tolliver County, downtown Washington up at Wilkes County, you're starting to see some heavy rain from this line. There are currently no active warnings with this line, but we are starting to see some significant weather advisories issued. So there are some strong wind gusts, maybe 40, 50 miles per hour. Some small hail can be ruled out and some very heavy rain. And some of those spotty downpours now showing up here around Augusta. That appears to be over the Augusta Exchange, right there with the movie theater, Target, everything like that, right near Bobby Jones and I-20. So there is some pockets of rain around, and we're going to have that chance for rain to continue through this evening. So we're jumping ahead hour by hour here. Even through sunset, maybe even a little bit after that, can't rule out some showers and storms lingering around. Most of the overnight should be dry for us, though, and Tuesday looking dry for the most part, minus a few straight afternoon storms. For Isaias, we're starting to see better consistency with models today. We're starting to see the models kind of agree with one another, and we're also starting to see some run-to-run consistency. So more confidence in where this storm is going. And you can see Isaias right here expected to make that landfall between Myrtle Beach and Wilmington, North Carolina. That could be anytime within the next several hours. It's only about 70 miles off the coast of South Carolina right now and moving fairly quickly. And look at all the ground it will cover over the next 48 hours. Currently here just off the coast of South Carolina, by this time Wednesday all the way up past Maine. So it's going to be a quick mover here over the next few days. We do have hurricane warnings actually in effect from the South Santee River in South Carolina up to Surf City, North Carolina. And that's where that landfall is expected Isaias possibly could strengthen a little bit just before landfall later tonight. So there is that possibility still of Isaias becoming a Category 1 storm before landfall. Here's a look at how much rain we're expecting across the two-state and portions of North Carolina as well. There's your swath of heavy rain from Isaias to where they could see several inches, possibly over half a foot in some spots. Now, that should be fairly isolated, but luckily for us, we're not expecting much in the way of flooding rains. Storms the next few afternoons definitely will be capable of producing some heavy downpours, but overall, not expecting widespread impacts. Here's a current look at those gusts. They continue to bump up just a tad from Myrtle Beach down to Charleston. Still no tropical storm force winds found along the South Carolina coast, but they are expecting those by later this evening into tonight. Luckily, Isaias, once again, a quick mover, so should be out of South and North Carolina by Tuesday night. For us, we are just going to get locked into our summer pattern. Each afternoon, topping out in the mid to low 90s, and we will have the chance for better afternoon storms starting Wednesday. Tuesday, not expecting a lot, but just can't rule out that straight afternoon storm.
Thanks, Riley. Major cosmetic companies facing scrutiny for making billions off skin lightening products. Critics say the products promote toxic beauty ideals. Some companies promise to discontinue or rename their lightening creams. MTS Tayeb explains why some say that's not enough.
Never in her wildest dreams did Nina Davalouri think she'd be crowned Miss America.
I'm so proud to be the first Indian Miss America.
But not everyone was celebrating her barrier-breaking win.
The morning after I won Miss America, and I woke up to an Indian headline that said, "Is Miss America too dark to be Miss India?"
Davalouri says criticism of her darker skin tone is part of an ugly concept known as colorism. What is colorism?
The idea that fair skin is better than darker skin. The idea that white is considered more elite than darker skin complexions. And that inherently in itself is racism.
Nivea Natural Fairness Body Lotion.
Ads like these are shown across Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Helping to fuel a demand for skin lightening products, the creams contain chemical agents that can reduce melanin content. Some, if used incorrectly, can damage the skin.
Light skin tones.
Major corporations like L'Oreal, Unilever, and Johnson & Johnson are all part of the industry, which is worth over $8 billion a year, promoting the idea that lighter skin is beautiful skin. Stephanie Yeboah is a British Ghanaian author.
You've written that at 14 years old, you began what you've called a toxic love affair with skin whitening creams.
Yeah, I started lightening my skin because I thought, well, if I can alleviate one of the things that makes me have no privilege, which was my skin color, I thought that I could do a bit better in life.
Cosmetic giants are being accused of hypocrisy for claiming to stand against racism while at the same time promoting whiteness. In a statement, Johnson & Johnson said it'll no longer sell two skin lightening lotions. L'Oreal said it's removing the words white, fair, and light from its skin products. Nivea's parent company followed, removing whitening and fair from products and marketing, while Unilever is renaming its hugely popular Fair and Lovely cream to Glow and Lovely.
Is renaming these products enough?
They need to ban the products. They don't need to rename it.
Both Nina and Stephanie say companies need to get rid of these products altogether, arguing communities of color must also let go of these deeply held beliefs about beauty. Still ahead, learning from home may not come easy to everyone. However, many apps are helping ease some of that frustration. We'll break down one of those resources.
Summer travel is back.
Follow News 1226 on Instagram to see what's trending in your area.
On your side, this is News 12 at 6 o'clock.
From disinfecting mist to wipes, cleaning is on overdrive in Columbia County schools. Plus, our I-team finds thousands of kids back without a school nurse in the middle of a pandemic. Plus, it's a side of the virus we don't often talk about, recovery. We follow up with this Augusta man in his ongoing fight against COVID. And an Augusta dance floor packed with people despite the governor's order against it. From the governor's office to the sheriff's office, we look at how social distancing is supposed to be enforced. A live look now out of Myrtle Beach, where you can see the rain down in the ocean, very choppy as Tropical Storm Isaias churns off the coast. Riley is keeping an eye on it for us. Riley?
And Zayna, Myrtle Beach is likely going to be one of those spots that sees the worst conditions from Isaias. Latest update came in at 5 p.m. It did finally make that northeastern turn. It is moving fairly quickly, which is one of the good things about Isaias. That limits the flood threat some, but increases the wind threat. So the winds are expected to possibly be close to hurricane force at landfall later tonight, and that is expected to be between anywhere from Myrtle Beach to Wilmington, North Carolina. And then from there on out, it's going to get moved. It's going to get sucked into an upper level trough and move very quickly up that eastern seaboard and towards the northeast. We do have hurricane warnings in effect from the South Santee River near Georgetown, South Carolina, all the way up to Surf City, just north of Wilmington. So that red area is your hurricane warnings and where landfall is expected later today. So that is where they're likely going to see the worst conditions, but they're going to have to deal with surge, wind, flooding rains all the way along that Carolina coast. And even inland county is going to be battling some flooding rains as this storm is producing some torrential downpours close to the coast. Now, towards our west, we have a stalled boundary that actually produced some fairly strong thunderstorms that are now moving into our western counties. So the rain we're seeing this afternoon, not necessarily associated with Isaias. This is just driven by a frontal boundary. And you can see some strong storms stretching all the way from the tip of Lincoln County through Washington County. Some of these are producing 40 to 50 mile per hour gusts, so we're going to continue to monitor. We'll have much more coming up in about 10 minutes.
Now that the first day of school is in the books, for the first batch of students in our area, our I-team is doing some homework tonight. The American Association of Pediatrics recommends a nurse on site for every school. But as our Meredith Anderson uncovered, thousands of local students could head back in a pandemic without one.
They've been silenced for months. But today, school bells rang in the start of the new year. And even though the sound hasn't really changed, so much is different.
We haven't put kids back in the petri dish that I call school.
A petri dish where schools experiment with new safety precautions as kids are cultured into this new normal. This year, each school essentially becomes a lab, putting brand new safety practices to the test.
So what does this mean, sending kids back to school in a pandemic?
It's going to be a very daunting task and very overwhelming.
Dawn McAdams is the immediate past president of the South Carolina Nurses Association, and she says now more than ever, each school needs a nurse.
Schools typically pay much less than the hospital or a doctor's office will pay, so it's difficult to get school nurses and retain them.
That's not just in South Carolina. The same goes for Georgia and every other state in the country. According to the National Association of School Nurses, 25% of schools do not employ a nurse. 35% only have part-time nurses. When the I-team put those latest numbers under the microscope, we noticed they're pre-pandemic, meaning they don't account for the nurses who responded to the COVID crisis. Dr. April Hartman is the chief of general pediatric and adolescent medicine at AU Health.
They need nurses at the hospital, they need nurses in clinics, and so I think that there just may not be enough nurses to go around.
So how many nurses aren't around in the two-state? According to the latest numbers from the National Education Association, for every school nurse in Georgia, there are more than 1,700 students. To put that in perspective, the National Association of School Nurses recommends one nurse per 750 students. In South Carolina, 198 schools have no full-time nurse. 75 schools only have a part-time nurse. At least 123 state schools have no nurse at all. Zooming in even more, the I-team requested data from our 3 largest districts. Let's start in Richmond County. According to an open records request, RCSS employs 31.5 nurses. Though most schools have a part-time nurse, a few RCSS schools have a full-time nurse. The I-team sent the same request to Columbia County schools and found it only has 19 school nurses. Every school does not have their own dedicated nurse. After a follow-up request, we can break it down even more. All Columbia County elementary schools have nurses. The schools without nurses, all middle schools, and all high schools. Nurses just visit those 4 hours a week. As for Aiken County, we did eventually hear back 15 days after sending the request. Aiken County Schools is the only system we contacted that is charging the public for this information. Until we get the numbers, it does appear Aiken County isn't fully staffed, since the I-Team found Aiken County has posted a job opening for a school nurse.
There is still risk for children to get COVID-19.
According to the CDC, those under 18 account for under 7% of COVID-19 cases, and most symptoms for kids are mild. Still, Superintendent Molly Spearman is concerned, even making this frightening comparison as early as May.
We've been really doing risk management around active shooters coming into a school and have placed school resource officers in every school and drills and all the focus there that this is the same type of risk management now, but it's around the health of our students.
Meanwhile, Dr. Hartman sees some possible solutions, like telehealth, for example. Why not find a way to have virtual appointments in schools without nurses? Better yet, she wonders why local schools don't reach out to nurses in training.
Why don't schools, collaborate with nursing schools and say, hey, send your nursing students here. They can at least assess the kids and say if they're okay to stay or go, and then we have some support and you have the training you need hands-on.
Students helping students in a time where we're all getting schooled in how to stay safe in a pandemic. Reporting for the I-Team, Meredith Anderson, on your side.
The first day is in the books for kids in 4 local counties today. This is what it looked like in schools this morning. Kids wearing masks, hallways divided, and teachers giving out hand sanitizer outside class. Those are just some of the precautions schools in Columbia County took today. Wrdw shows us how parents felt it went.
I spoke to several parents who said bringing their children back to school was nerve-wracking. But then there was a feeling of relief and hope. It's probably the most abnormal back to school ever, but parents sure tried their best.
It was definitely hard sending her off and I haven't seen her classroom. I haven't met her teachers face to face.
Christy Montgomery says her 3rd grader walked in all by herself, excited.
It was a little bit different today.
Tamika Few says her social butterfly Chandler needed to be in school.
You still had the jitters, but they were different jitters because you had to make a decision that was best for your household.
And the best decision for Jessica Indris was to send her 3 kids back to class. Her husband's been deployed almost a year.
Clorox wipes. I was able to send those to school this morning, and they're all in Arabic. My husband had to mail them to us.
Everyone's doing it differently, but the school system says the first day went smoothly.
People were wearing their face covering. They were happy to be back. And outside of that, that new look, it was a great first day.
Dr. Carey says she saw students social distancing in between classes and following the new rules. And that helps these parents and friends stay hopeful for the future.
It's going to be one of those years where we look back and go, we're for the better, I think.
The parents I spoke to say if things don't go well and they do have to go back to learning from home full time, then they'll still be confident that bringing their kids back to school was the best decision for their family. They say the worst thing anyone can say right now is I told you so. Reporting in Columbia County, Wrdw on your side.
Thanks, Brady. Columbia County schools say they hope these next few weeks will be a positive response to the virus in the community. They say they'll be trying to perfect their back-to-school process. Another county that went back to school today was Warren County. Superintendent Carey sending her school staff a heartfelt message. She says she was burdened by the decision on going back to school, but says, bottom line, it's almost impossible to have school in Warren County without school on campus. She says they need to make up ground for lost time with students. She continues by thanking teachers and staff multiple times and urging everyone at the school to stay safe. Augusta University's campus fully reopened today, and students are moving into their dorms. Students were seen walking around campus today, many wearing masks. Those masks are required on campus. All buildings are now open and fully staffed, with some exceptions for remote working. Susan Davies says the moving in process is going smoothly so far.
This morning, it's been quiet, it's been organized, it's been calm, which is exactly what we hoped for with the social distancing housing moving in.
The first day of classes at Augusta University are a week from today. $145,000. That's how much money North Augusta officials say Riverside Village owners owe the city. That's all in taxes, which have apparently gone unpaid. According to Aiken County tax records, there are a total of 12 buildings in Riverside Village that taxes have not been paid for. City Council is meeting right now talking about what the next steps are. 2 people found dead at a home this morning in Warren County. Now the GBI is helping the Warren County Sheriff's Office in the investigation. The 2 bodies were found at 10:15 this morning in a home on Myrtle Road, south of Warrenton. Officials say it's very early in the investigation. Names of the 2 people found have not been released just yet. 19 inmates have now tested positive in Augusta. Almost 2 weeks ago, we first told you 7 inmates at the Webster Detention Center had tested positive, while several others were tested in quarantine with flu-like symptoms. The Sheriff's Office says they are no longer showing any symptoms. They say they're in the process of testing deputies that worked where the outbreak happened. The Burt County Sheriff's Office also dealing with a number of COVID cases. We're learning today 2 deputies and 3 jailers tested positive. They say no inmates have tested positive. At our local hospitals, 97 new cases at AU Health. In most cases, people have been able to recover from COVID and get back to their cases in Georgia today with 2 more deaths. In South Carolina, 1,100 new cases. That includes 10 new cases in Aiken County and 29 in Barnwell County. 11 more people have died there. In most cases, people have been able to recover from COVID and get back to their normal life. But for one local man, that has not been the case. He's recovered from the virus, but Sydney Heiberger shows us he's still got a long way to go.
A few months ago, Rusty Bonham could carry around his kids. He could carry on his drums for hours. Now he can hardly carry himself. His wife calls it the dark side of survival. Days for Rusty Bonham
Get up, eat breakfast, try to take about 10 steps on the walker.
look a lot different now.
Making music and going on golf cart rides, having a good time. This is the hardest thing I've ever had to go through. And I've been through a lot.
Rusty spent a month in the hospital, most of it in the ICU, fighting for his life.
I died. I died in the hospital. So I'm very lucky to be alive.
In some ways, his wife says being there was easier.
Hey, baby.
He was sedated a lot of the time he was in the hospital. He wasn't having to feel the pain. He wasn't having to go through all of those problems. At home he is. He feels every little thing that happens.
Now Sarah Bonham isn't just wife. She's full-time caretaker, therapist, nurse.
We take his pulse ox constantly, medicines constantly, insulins constantly, therapy constantly. Just trying to get him better, trying to get him stronger.
There's a long road ahead, and it will be a while before Rusty is back on the drums.
This isn't recovery from a hip replacement. This isn't recovery from a broken leg.
But a positive attitude makes all the difference.
We'll get him back there. We'll get him back behind that kid. Right.
Right now, Rusty is still having a lot of trouble with his breathing and stamina. His doctors don't know when he will be back to his old self, but they're telling him to just take it day by day. In Evans, Sydney Heiberger, on your side.
Heads up, Thompson, you got some storms heading your way, tracking down I-20 towards us here in Augusta as well. Radar update and a look at East IES coming up.
This video shows people on the dance floor. Not a lot of social distancing going on. We started asking questions, and now the Sheriff's Office is investigating. What they say coming up in 1 minute.
We're tiny. It's big.
It looks like a video taken before coronavirus. People on a dance floor with the DJ playing. But this video taken at the Country Club Dance Hall on Washington Road this weekend is getting a lot of talk on social media. As Will Rio tells us, now the Sheriff's Office is taking a closer look.
You're looking at what appears to be a packed dance floor this weekend at a club in Augusta. This is the Country Club. just one day after Governor Kemp extended his public health state of emergency. So where does local law enforcement come into play to control crowds at local bars and clubs? According to Governor Kemp's executive order, bars can only allow gatherings of 50 people or 35% of the total occupancy. The country club told me in a statement they followed the executive order's rules by only allowing the 35% capacity on Saturday. But even when those guidelines are followed, this video shows people still weren't social distancing. According to the Georgia Department of Health, bars should avoid any event that includes close contact. We reached out to the Richmond County Sheriff's Office, who's seen in the video at the country club, to see what the department can enforce. They declined to interview, but said in a statement they are investigating the incident to see if there were code violations or if it violated the executive order. We also reached out to the governor's office to see what local law enforcement can control. They say all local agencies can enforce restrictions on bars, but it's not required. Governor Kemp's executive order does last until August 15th, and he can choose whether he wants to renew that or not at that time. Reporting in Augusta, Wrdw on your side.
The country club says they do have security officers at the club to make sure these guidelines are followed. Those officers are affiliated with the Richmond County Sheriff's Office. Taking a live look now from Kiowa Island on the South Carolina coast, brought to you by Camp. You can see dark clouds forming there, the wind whipping with Tropical Storm Isaias out in the Atlantic. Riley Hale, you're tracking this for us.
In the center of Isaias, likely less than 100 miles away from Kiowa Island there off South Carolina. Here's a current look at Tropical Storm Isaias. Just barely a tropical storm. If we see this increase at all, it'll likely become a Category 1 hurricane, which is possible before it does make landfall later this evening into tonight. Once that happens, once these storms get over land, they do start to weaken, but it's going to take some time for this storm to weaken as it makes its way up the eastern coast fairly quickly. They are still expecting flooding rains, intense surge, and intense winds as well as this does make its way up the east coast. Now for Charleston and Myrtle Beach and those coastal communities along South and North Carolina, they could possibly see close to half a foot of rain and maybe even more. And even inland places in North Carolina from Fayetteville all the way up to Raleigh could see some very substantial rain. For us here in the CSRA, once again, we're not expecting any impacts from Isaias, but we are expecting impacts from storms moving in here. This is thanks to a frontal boundary that's off towards our west, so the storms currently on radar not necessarily associated with Isaias, but still producing possibly 40 to 50 mile an hour gusts, some cloud-to-ground lightning, and we actually just had a new aerial flood advisory issued for far northern Saluda County that's going to stay in effect until 8:15 p.m. So a flood advisory is letting you know you've seen some heavy rain, you could continue to see some heavy rain, and we could see some urban and small stream flooding, so mainly those low-lying, poor drainage areas. On the west side of Augusta through, looks like Fort Gordon, we're tracking a good little downpour just south of Grovetown, and so this line of storms extends all the way through our viewing area, and they are heading towards us here in Augusta. Here's a look from Grovetown, looking westbound down I-20. You can see those dark skies, so once again, even if you're not seeing rain right now, you do have that chance later into this evening. We're not expecting to be completely dry until we get after midnight tonight. We have cooled off some. We're currently at 89 here in Augusta. We hit a high of 96